Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Apologies if I've got a little bit of a giggle / smirk going on. I come into this having just watched Paul Gascoigne Gazza explaining why he didn't think he probably would have been any better off going to Man United and Alex Ferguson controlling him. It's really funny. I can't repeat what he said, but have a little look for it. He's done a podcast with Gary Lineker, Alan Shearer and Micah Richards. It's very funny. I don't normally start off a video talking about other stuff that other people have done, but I made the mistake of coming into this having watched that just seconds before I hit record, and it is still rattling around in my brain making me chuckle. It's very funny. It is very funny. But Tottenham Hotspur, I guess that is Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur past with Gazza and Gary Lineker, but we're talking about Tottenham Hotspur now, Tottenham Hotspur future, and actually, I suppose a little bit of Tottenham Hotspur past, because Spurs have announced some departures from the club. Ryan Sessegnon and Japhet Tanganga are both being released. It's weird because it's kind of described as have been released, but technically it's at the end of their contracts, which is will be June the 30th. Spurs have decided not to take up the extra year option on both of those players, so they'll join Eric Dyer and even Perisic of heading off at the end of their contracts this month. Obviously, Eric Dyer heading to Bayern permanently, and Perisic heading to Hajduk Split. So, in academy as well, just to mention them. Tottenham's under 21s. You've got Charlie Sayers and Billy Heaps are heading off. Charlie Sayers at the end of his contract. Billy at the end of his, I think it's third year scholarships come to an end as well. Under 18s players, Kieran Morgan and Han Willoft King as well. Funny little story about Charlie Sayers. It's funny, not that funny, but I was meant to interview him 2 years ago during the last time Spurs went to Korea a couple of years back. I was ready and waiting in the team hotel. I was actually stood in their games room talking to a couple of the media people there, and Charlie never turned up. Charlie, I think a combination of the jet lag and Antonio Conte's mad training sessions out there absolutely did him in, and he slept through the entire kind of, I think it was afternoon I was there. Morning. It was morning. It was just morning. It was maybe 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And he slept right through it. And, that's certainly what they told me. Anyway, nobody could get hold of him and trying to get him, raise him from his bed. Obviously, they went in the room with him, but I'm guessing someone maybe tried to knock on the door. It was going to be this really nice story as well, because he's Southend-born lad. Southend to Seoul, it was this whole kind of story. He was in Korea. He's still so young, though. He's only 20 years old. I'm sure he's going to have a career in the game ahead of him. He had a really serious eye injury, Charlie did, and thankfully kind of came back from it. But yeah, I was trying to think whether I've seen him in the under-21s too recently. I haven't seen him in a little while, but hopefully goes on and has a great career. I think that probably would have been his only outside of the club interview up to this point. But it was not meant to be. Hey, as someone that's often slept in myself, absolutely no issues with that whatsoever. So yeah, but the players, Sess and Tanganga, you know my feelings on Sess. I'd have loved to have seen him make it. He's got so much talent, he has, but we just know the hamstrings. The hamstrings were just such a killer for him in that. I think I've got the number 57 Spurs appearances in 5 years. It kind of says it. Well, of course, he was on loan at Hoffenheim for a season as well, where he played the fair chunk of the games there, but just those hamstrings. I still think he's going to have a big career ahead of him. My hope is, the feeling certainly is, that these two surgeries had, one on each leg, will absolutely kind of make these hamstring problems such a slim chance of them happening again. So hopefully he's all right and goes on to have a decent career. And I'm sure I know there's a fair few clubs looking at him, whether that is on a short-term deal or a pay-as-you-play deal, something like that. But I'm sure he'll be fine. He only turned 24 last month. He's still so young. This is the crazy thing. He was such a star at such a young age. He's got his whole career stretched out ahead of him still. And if anything, Whereas some of these kind of players that start really young and then kind of burn out because they played so much football. With Sess, yes, he's had injuries, but actually the rest of his muscles, hopefully, he won't kind of suffer from that burnout because, they haven't been used as much, I guess, is the only way to put it. Left a nice message on social media. So left a message as if he left it on the answer phone. Said, Spurs, thank you. I would like to thank everyone associated with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I joined at 19. I have met some very special people along the way that have supported and guided me. From my teammates to the backroom staff and to my coaches, thank you. I've got memories and friends for life. From making my debut to scoring in the Champions League, I'll always cherish these moments. Unfortunately, things didn't work out the way I or the club wanted during my time here. It broke my heart that I couldn't play in front of you a lot more. I want to wish you all the best for the future. Thank you, Sess. Which is, it's a classy message from a player who I know fans and no doubt people within the club would get frustrated with players that suffer from injury problems that just there's nothing they can do about it. Eric Lamela was the same. It wasn't something that he was able to control, unfortunately. Just sometimes people's bodies, and maybe it was because he played so much football at so young. He was 16, wasn't he, when he came through at Fulham? And maybe at that point, overuse of those hamstrings did it, maybe. But it's just so sad. And to see him briefly against Burnley in the FA Cup when he wasn't even meant to come on, and just got a little issue from that, and then he came back again in the under-21s. I was watching that game I think it was on Spurs Play. I wasn't there, and just the sight of him going down, and then it was awful. Just seeing him by the side of it, but he just knew, and he knew that something was wrong, very badly wrong, because he'd been there before. But fingers crossed that these two operations that he's had will sort things going forward for him, because I only want the best for him. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He's a lovely guy, and just hasn't deserved what's happened to him really in his career since that incredible start to life in the game. With Japhet actually did surprise a few of us, because Spurs did that old classic, which you've heard me say before, where they announce when someone signs a new contract, or in Sess's case when they sign, this big long deal, and they talk about the number of years, and they say it's up to 2057, and then you realise that actually, I know that's a very long contract, you find out that the final year they included it even though it was actually an option they had, which I guess technically is their right to do, because they have that player contracted until that point if they choose to do so. But for the rest of us, I got wind of Sess, didn't I, a couple of months ago or a month ago, that it was a couple of months ago. I got wind that he would be out of contract this summer, and then we got a wind properly 3 or 4 weeks ago that he'd was told that they were not going to take that option. But with Japhet, it was probably a bit more of a surprise, mainly because of the interest in him that there's been. And I can understand some people questioning, like, why then? Why would you not extend the deal? But there's different sides to that. I mean, I'd imagine that the clubs interested in him are well aware of his contract situation and are probably thinking, well, we might as well wait a year, or we'll wait to 6 months or whatever. And then it gets to the point where Spurs are probably thinking, well, it's not as easy as signing up, sell him. It doesn't really work like that. You're taking a risk then of taking another 12 months worth of wages on your wage bill. If you weren't able to offload him to a club that quickly. And let's be honest, Spurs do struggle to get players off the books. So they have taken that decision with quite a few players in recent years of just deciding to let them go. And I guess with someone like Japhet, he's been such a club servant. He's been there for so many years, despite the fact he's only turned 25 a couple of months ago. And I always felt with Japhet, he suffered from two things. One was being versatile and homegrown, that Spurs would just often keep him around as an option in case everyone else was injured. And there were a few seasons when if he'd gone out on loan, I swear his development would have really skyrocketed at that point, but it just didn't happen for him. I guess a little bit like it's happened with Skippy in the last season. And I think the other issue for Japhet has been injuries. Knee and back mainly have been the two. I think it was back that he's had some issues with, and mainly that knee. But I've been so happy for him this season, because Augsburg was a tough loan. Didn't play a single competitive minute for them. Came back, went off to Millwall, and had just the loan, probably the best, I'd imagine the best 6 months of his career. It'd be interesting to see if he says that. I would imagine it has to be, because he went there. He played week in, week out. He was a favourite. He was one that the manager, or Neil Harris, wanted to play every single game. He was wanted, and that's such a huge thing. And he responded in kind by playing superbly. He scored a few goals and absolutely helped sweep Millwall up the table. He was a key integral part of that under Neil Harris. And yeah, honestly, only good things for Japhet. Again, another player I've interviewed a couple of times. And he's a very, lovely chap. Loves Tottenham. Appreciates what they always did for him. And now I guess it's just time for him to head off. I was just going to double check that there's been no message from him yet. I would imagine he's preparing something, because he's obviously has been at the club for so long. This is the thing with doing a video. There's a couple of things that anything can change at any point. And the other thing, of course, is that little things like that can happen. I'm just double checking. No, nothing yet. I didn't want to do him a disservice by saying he hadn't done something yet, and he actually had. So yeah, he's that's two players that one homegrown, one club trained that go as well, which of course within itself creates a couple of issues, mainly for the club trained, because with Japhet going and Harry Kane and Harry Winks leaving last summer, Spurs have only got 4 senior club-trained players now. Brandon Austin, Alfie Whiteman, Oliver Skipp and Troy Parrott. Which, I mean, of those, obviously Brandon Austin signed a new 5-year deal, so he's sticking around. Alfie Whiteman's got a year left, but whether he stays this season with Vicario, Forster, Austin, and you've got Josh Keeley, Luca Gunter, 2 really good young keepers, is another thing. I don't know what happens with Alfie Whiteman. You've got Oliver Skipp, who desperately wants to play first-team football, and there's a lot of interest in him this summer. Spurs have got a real decision to make with Skippy, because you could keep him around for the club-trained aspect, but you're probably absolutely putting a roadblock in his career, because I think I said this in the last video or one of the previous ones. I think you send Skippy off now for a loan season somewhere, and I think he has a brilliant season. I think he absolutely kicks on his career massively. We saw him do it at Norwich, and I think he plays for a team, maybe a lower half Premier League team just at this point in his career, and I think he has an absolute barnstormer of a season. So as much as I like him, and as much as I think he'll still could have a big part to play at Spurs if they wanted him to, I think for him to get out of the club right now is the best thing for him. I asked Postecoglou, he's given me kind of 2 slightly, not different answers, but different kinds of answers. I asked him about a month and a half ago about Skippy, and he said the club will make the best decision for the club, which was quite kind of interesting. That kind of almost hinted towards the club-trained aspect. But then a fortnight ago, he also said that he sees Skippy as part of his plans next season. Although he did add, sure, why not? Which is a little bit like, yeah, you kind of, I don't know, that terminology slightly took it out of that for me. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Skippy. And then obviously the last one of that bunch is Troy Parrott. He's been having a great old time as Troy. Scored again last night, winning goal for Republic of Ireland against Hungary. Did a near pitch-long sprint and put the ball in the net. I don't say almost made a mess of it. His shot wasn't the greatest, but it did squeeze under the goalkeeper and kind of go in. He did have another player running alongside him. I initially thought you could have passed to him, but when I kind of watched it back, it was a bit like, no, he would have been offside the other player. The other player had to kind of check his run almost. So he wasn't probably the option that it looked like if you look at it quickly. But yeah, he scored a goal, scored the winning goal, and that is another goal for him. 2 days after he scored a hat-trick for Excelsior Rotterdam against NAC Breda in the playoff final, second leg, that they had the playoff promotions, relegation / promotion playoffs technically in the Dutch football. So yeah, only 2 days between the games. So he did come on late in the game, Troy, but still had a massive impact. He was so unlucky in that playoff game as well, because he was man of the match, took them back, helped take them back from 6-2 down from the first leg against Breda to 6-6. And then the visitors scored another goal late in the game, and that meant Excelsior were relegated and Breda went up. So with Troy, AZ Alkmaar are currently showing the most interest in him. They want to keep him in the Eredivisie. Teams in Italy, Germany and the Championship have all shown interest over recent months, but Alkmaar, from what I understand, are the ones that have probably showing the most keenness, interest, whichever you want to call it. Obviously, Troy scored 17 goals last season in the Dutch leagues. Yes, you could say 10 of them came in the playoffs against teams in the second division, but still, got to put the ball in the net. 17 goals, 5 assists, and that's for a team, even the 10 goals in the Eredivisie, for a team in 16th place who got relegated, that's still far more impressive than people, I think, are giving him credit for, because obviously people just write off the Eredivisie. They'll do that. On one hand, they'll write it off, and then they'll say someone like Jimenez at Feyenoord, yeah, get him in. And it's like, well, how does that work out? But, you know, you imagine, you stick, I mean, Alkmaar finished 4th in the Eredivisie. Stick Troy Parrott in the 4th place team. The name of their striker's gone out of my head. He was someone that was linked with Spurs. I think he's a big, is it Greek player who scored a lot of goals for them. But, you know, put Troy in there, I think he gets 20 plus goals. And I think he probably would have done that for Feyenoord as well. So that's not to do down the achievements of anyone else. It's, if anything, it's to big up Troy and say, you know, 22-year-old playing for the team that got relegated in 16th place in the league, still scored 10 in the main season and then another 7 after in the playoffs. I think he would have done very well. So we'll see what happens with him. It's just never really worked at Spurs for him entirely, has it? It was such a big prospect. Poch gave him a game, I think it was one game, was it in the League Cup? Mourinho gave him a couple of games in the Premier League and in the FA Cup. And obviously there was that really awkward when he missed the penalty against Norwich in the FA Cup, and Mourinho was a bit harsh on it all, saying, see, that's why you don't pick a kid. It was all like, it wasn't the greatest way of dealing with it. Despite the fact that he'd actually been quite good with Troy and giving him his debut and seeking him out after the game, giving the match ball and all of that. But yeah, obviously had loans at Millwall, Ipswich, MK Dons, Preston, and then headed off to Excelsior. His hope, and he's told me this before, and I've heard this from people around him even more recently, his hope is to break through at Spurs. That's still the dream for him. Only made the 4 appearances for the club, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. I just don't. I'd love him to get an opportunity to have a little run out for Postecoglou this pre-season, but there's a part of me that wonders that if there's a deal to be done, whether Spurs end up getting it done a little bit earlier than that, because, you know, he's a player that you'd imagine Spurs stick a healthy sell-on clause there like they did with Marcus Edwards, whether they put in even a buyback clause just to make sure in case he does go on to be a real talent. But yes, of course, personally, as a club-trained player, as a real talented young player, I would love to see him have a season in and around the first team where he gets to have a few minutes here and there. But I just feel like Postecoglou likes Dane Scarlett, although he probably needs another loan again. And also they're looking for a striker this summer as well. So is there going to be the chances for Troy to play the football he needs to play? I don't know. But I do like him as a player. He's got eye for goal. I always remember people telling me when he was young, and this was even when Harry Kane was there, that Troy was the best finisher at the club. That was what they told me 3-4 years back. It was a while back. Just because he was just a natural born finisher, as it were. And I like him. His technique's superb. I think that's why he's kind of found his place in the Eredivisie. And that's not the same as people saying they found their level. It's more finding his place in a technical league, and that may well be in Italy or Spain. He could be terrific as well. He did a good little interview after the goal for Republic of Ireland last night, where he spoke briefly about the loan. And he was, kind of saying similar things, that he loved playing football there. The technique and everything was there. It suited his game nicely. It's we'll see. It's one of those where if you're Spurs, he's kind of on the rise at the moment, but maybe if they don't feel that he's going to break through for them, maybe you take the money and you take the percentage of anything that comes in the future on him. So where does that leave Spurs with the whole club-trained angle? You know, if, let's say, Whiteman, Skip and Parrott could all potentially depart, which would be kind of a bit mad, if you're not aware, if I've said this before, but if you've missed it, so in European football, Europa League for Spurs next season, as a minimum, 8 of a club's 25-man squad for the competition must be reserved exclusively for locally trained players. 4 of them are association trained, so have played in the English FA's competitions, and 4 have to be club trained, so come through that club. Club trained technically means those who are on the club's books for 3 entire seasons or 36 months between the ages of 15 and 21. So what some people have suggested, which technically is one way of doing it, although it's a bit of a waste of a way of doing it, is that you could promote some of the young players from the under-21s and say, look, here you go, here's our club-trained players. But the thing with that is you're kind of wasting spots there because those players are already eligible to be on the B list. The B list is for like academy youngsters, essentially, who have been there. I think it's 3 years since the age, between the ages of 15, 21. I can't remember what it is. 15, 18, 15, 21, one of the two. So there's all of those players that people would probably suggest for the role can go on that, are on the B list anyway. So you kind of, you almost might as well just leave a blank space, which you can, is another way of doing it. Again, you're wasting a spot. Someone else pointed out, which is true. I think there's Max Robson in the under-21s will be of that older age group, so technically could be included. Although he has trained with the first team at times, but I would be surprised if he's would be part of first team affairs next season. You never know. I've watched him a few times this season. He's played well, but whether that would be a bit of a leap for him at this stage now. I think he's. Let me just type it in. I think he's 22, but I want to get that exactly right. Don't want to show any disrespect to Max. I'm pretty sure he's 21 right now, but he turns 21 turns 22 during next season. I wonder whether he might actually fit into that B category. Maybe. But either way, he's not technically would be classified as a senior. A senior professional player at the club, first team player, if you know what I mean. So what are the other solutions? Well, the other solution would be that you'd go and sign someone who was originally at your club, a club-trained player. I think I've seen some people saying about Noni Madueke at Chelsea. I don't think he actually would qualify because I've got a feeling, again, I'm going to double check. I think he left Spurs before that period that would have had him. He left Spurs at, I didn't realise he played for the under-18s at 15. So he left for PSV in June 2018. Yes, he was only 16. So I don't think he would have qualified anyway as a club-trained player. The other one that some people have suggested is Kyle Walker-Peters. I was always a big advocate of Kyle Walker-Peters, so I would be more than happy to see Kyle Walker's come back at Kyle Walker would be great. Kyle Walker-Peters as a backup to Pedro Porro, why not? I'm trying to think whether he could play the inverted nature of the fullback role and be in midfield. I don't know. But that's one thing that some people suggested. I mean, certainly from my knowledge, I know that Spurs are keeping an eye at least on the situation with Marcus Edwards this summer as a potential option. I'm not saying it's a move that's definitely going to happen, and no approach has been made to Sporting as of yet, or certainly when I last checked in it hadn't. But he's been considered as one potential answer to that problem, is the way of putting it, I think. So that's not to say it's going to happen. It's not going to say they're going to follow up any potential thoughts on it, but definitely the club have considered him as a possibility. So if you're not aware who Marcus Edwards is, he's 25 now, which just makes me feel so old and shows how long I've been covering Spurs for now. He left Spurs 5 years ago. He had terrific potential, incredible talent on the ball. There's amazing low centre of gravity when he would dribble with the ball. Poch made that infamous comment, kind of comparing him to having the early traits of a young Lionel Messi. I still remember his press officer's face at the time going, no! I can just see a slow motion trying to put his hand across his mouth. And then he very quickly went, and Eric Lamela, like Eric Lamela. And it was like, yeah, headlines are written now. I'm sorry, Mauricio, it's already been done. But ultimately, Marcus would only go on to play 15 minutes of a couple of days later, funnily enough, in the League Cup tie against Gillingham. When, he looked very cool. It looked very good. He sent one shot just over the crossbar, I remember now. And he looked very bright. But that was kind of it. It never really went on from there. Poch would later write in his book about Marcus having some behavioural issues. He's admitted himself he had a fair bit of growing up to do. That's probably the best way to put it. He said that himself in an interview after he left. So he kind of bounced around a little bit. Before he left Spurs, he went to Norwich on a bit of a disastrous loan that didn't end up working well for him. Then he went to Excelsior, where Troy's been in last season. That one started off a little bit, I think he was a bit homesick, and then halfway through that season absolutely hit the ground running. And I think a bit like maybe with Troy, that Spurs decided at the end of that season, okay, now's probably, he's not going to make it at Spurs, but he's on the rise. And they sold him to Vitoria. He went to Vitoria and did well there, was snapped up by Sporting, and Ruben Amorim got his hands on him and really helped develop him. Last season, he had a brilliant season. His first full season at Sporting, 26 goal involvements, 51 games, 12 goals and 14 assists, 2 assists and 2 goals in the Champions League. You might remember one of the goals came at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in that 1-1 draw. And this season hasn't been as good. Still had 6 goals and 9 assists. So, 15 goal involvements, 44 matches, and helped Sporting win the Primera Liga title. It just the second half of the season didn't really work out for him. He had an illness around the turn of the year, and when he came back, he found Francisco Trincao just having a great run of form and couldn't really get his right wing slot back from him. Most of his appearances from then on for Marcus came from the bench this season, and there was one he came off the bench against Porto. It was a mad game. He came off the bench late on, got an assist, helped them come back from 2-0 to 2-2 down, and got himself sent off for butting heads with the Porto winger Galeno. Marcus has made no secret of his desire to come back to England at some point. And from what I understand, he would be happy to come back to Tottenham. And Spurs, I think, are a number of clubs looking at Marcus as a potential. I think Crystal Palace have been reported as another one that have been looking at him as well. I think with Spurs, another aspect of it is that they have this financial advantage when it comes to Marcus, because when they sold him to Vitoria, they did so with a 50% sell-on clause, which is obviously a big old clause. It's the kind of one you'd be hoping if they sell Troy, they put in there. And when Marcus moved from Vitoria to Sporting, rather than Spurs cashing in, they agreed to let the release clause move on with him. So he went to Sporting with a 50% sell-on clause to Spurs. Then when Spurs signed Pedro Porro permanently, that's difficult to say, they negotiated Sporting that went down from 50% to 35% for Marcus as part of the deal. So technically, Sporting are not desperate to let Marcus Edwards go. They're quite happy with him as part of the squad. Amorim obviously is remaining around and he likes him. Edwards has got 2 years left in his deal. From what I understand, Sporting value him at around £15 million, which is before further add-ons, which would obviously lift that price tag a bit higher than that. But I guess if you're looking at it with Spurs having 35% sell-on clause, that would take the initial base figure down to around £9.75 million before the add-ons are whacked on. So you can see why it's an idea that isn't the worst in the world in terms of fixing that homegrown issue. There's definitely that there, and that's could be a helpful element to it. But then I think it also depends really on what happens with Spurs looking for more high-profile, if you want to say it, statement signings that people have spoken about that they'll have their eye on this summer. Obviously there's been links with Nico Williams at Atletico Bilbao, Dani Olmo, at Leipzig, Albert Gudmundsson at Genoa was another one, although technically he plays more centrally as a bit of a support striker, through the middle, but he can also play on the wing. He's another one they've looked at this year. The Crystal Palace pairing, both fantastic players, Michael Olise and Eberechi Eze. Obviously Eze again able to play more through the centre but can also do a job out wide. Barcelona's Rafinha as well. They've all been linked, so you can understand Spurs maybe rather than looking to sign Werner and Marcus Edwards for a sum total of around £10 million, you can I know some people go, that's exactly what they want to do. But I would have thought more they would look for a high-profile, big upgrade first. And, some great names among those. And I'm sure there's many more as well. There's been talk that Eze and Elise have got some kind of release clauses, both quite complicated ones that people have spoken about. I haven't heard too many details of those, but I have seen it being mentioned and reported by a couple of people. What I do know is that everyone has kind of spoken to around Palace seems to believe that they'll only let one of their big three go. The big three being Eze, Elise and Gay. And it's a funny summer, this one, isn't it? Because you've got the Euros, and that is going to be a pain in the backside for teams if they can't get a deal done early. And I wonder whether for Eze and Gay, whether their involvement with England, you'd imagine both will end up in the final squad, whether Elise's got a little bit of a leg up on them because he isn't at the Euros. He is in the preliminary Olympic French squad that Thierry Henry has named, with Jean-Philippe Mateta actually also at Palace, who's obviously an overage player. But I'm intrigued to see whether that gives Elise a leg up if they are to only let one go. Obviously, the way football works, if people come in with big offers, and let's be honest, if these release clauses, there are a way of triggering them, they may be hugely expensive release clauses. Like I say, this is outside my area of information. I've seen other people saying about these release clauses, and some people telling me that they involve lots of different boxes that need to be ticked and things like that as well. It's not as straight as, boom, here's the exact amount of money kind of thing. But yeah, I guess if those were able to both be met, it would be outside of Palace's control. I don't know. I think that's one of those we'll find out more about as time goes on in the next couple of weeks or so. But yeah, back to Marcus Edwards. He could be quite a cost-effective additional option, I guess, on top of any other potential ones you could bring in this window. And I guess it depends also on who else leaves. Brian Hill, we're expecting to leave out of that group too. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see what they do with the winger areas. Whether they go for a winger and a striker, which has been mooted, or whether they go for a striker who can also play out wide. You've got someone like Richarlison can also do a job on the left, or the right, actually. So whether they go for another player like that who kind of ticks both boxes in one, maybe. All indications originally were that they were going to look for a winger and a striker. So we'll see whether they find an effective way of doing both. And then maybe you could bring in someone like a Marcus Edwards. I don't know. It's an interesting one for Marcus Edwards as well, because he will want to play regularly, which he wouldn't, certainly unless he can force his way in at Spurs to do so, but also maybe on not an ego level, that's the wrong way to put it, but on a self kind of fulfillment level, he maybe would have some unfinished business at Tottenham and feel that he deserves to be a Premier League player. So, yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't... The other option, obviously, for Spurs is that he gets sold elsewhere and they just look at it and say, no, we'll take the 35%, thank you very much, and put that towards someone else. So, yeah, there's both ways it could go quite easily there. What else we had? We had more Conor Gallagher talk this week because there was suddenly a lot of chatter yesterday about Aston Villa making their intentions known of being in the race, as it were, for him. Villa I'm intrigued by that because Villa obviously have had some financial fair play issues themselves. They've been quite vocal, the people at the top there, in interviews talking about how they have to try and find a way around those. Champions League football will help them, but obviously surely that would be on next year's accounts rather than this year's. Been a lot of talk about Douglas Luiz heading out, Juventus being the main people looking for him. Villa are apparently open to selling him this month because of their financial issues, but then that makes you wonder if you'd have to sell him to be able to sort out your books, why would you then go for Conor Gallagher, who is being valued at more than 50 million? That would put you straight back in the same situation again. So surely Villa would have to look at Gallagher as an option after the books are closed for this financial fair play year. Yet Chelsea are looking, if they're going to have to make a sale, would be to cover in that same period before the end of this month. So I don't see how that tallies up. And that makes me wonder whether if Spurs are truly serious about going in for him, whether that's something they can use to their advantage. It is a lot of money, though. It is. And my voice went so high because I was very excited about that. yeah, like I say, they're believed to want more than £50 million for him, even though he's only got a year left in his contract. A lot of that, I think, will come because of Mason Mount. Mason Mount, you might remember, went to United for, I think it was almost approaching 60 with the add-ons, and he only had a year left on his deal as well. And the feeling within Chelsea is that Conor Gallagher is their captain, and some say a better player than Mason Mount. Obviously, it hasn't worked for Mason Mount since he moved to United, but with Gallagher, I like Gallagher. I do actually really like him. I know he's had a few people that I just don't feel people give him enough credit. I think he's a really good young player. And like I've said before, to be the captain of a club at, what is he, 22, something like that, you've got to be some player. And watching the England match, which was so dull on Monday night, I actually felt Gallagher, for me, was one of the standout players. I think it was really impressive. And I can see how in a Postecoglou system he would absolutely fit in beautifully. But yeah, like I say, his status at Chelsea is really strange because he's shown no real desire to leave, yet they've got this contract situation with him. And also the fact that as an academy player, he would be pure profit for them. He would show on their books in terms of trying to sort that out. But he has spoken in recent days about wanting to play for Enzo Maresca next season. So I don't get how it all tallies up. It's almost like the club are kind of thinking, yeah, we'd like you to go if we can get this money for you. And he's like, well, I don't really want to go. But no, you're right, mate. Very strange. I mean, they've also got Trevor Chalobah as well, who has had a hamstring injury which kept him out for the bulk of last season. Spurs like him as well. He's been valued around 30 million because he's still got 4 years left in his contract. The issue I feel with Chalobah, I think he'd be really good for Spurs. However, £30 million would be quite a lot for your fourth choice centre-back of that group, because you've obviously got Romero, Van de Ven and Dragishin. And also, if I'm Trevor Chalobah, I'm probably looking at it and thinking, why would I move from a situation at Chelsea where I wasn't going to maybe start every game, although obviously Thiago Silva's leaving? Why would I leave to go to a club when I'm probably only going to be playing European football for the first half of the season, at least waiting for someone to get an injury? So, yeah, this is the thing. There's so many times, and I'm guilty of it myself as well, and I know we all are as fans, of kind of saying, yeah, you just go and get that person, pay the money. And you kind of think, yeah, but what about the player's view? The player might not actually want to come. There's players like, you look at someone like, I don't know, anyone at Villa would be a good example right now. I've seen a lot of people saying, get this player from Villa, they're great. Why would you leave Villa right now? I mean, Douglas Luiz, we've just been talking about, he would, I guess, for a team like Juventus maybe, or Arsenal, I think, have been linked with him. But if you're at Villa right now, next season you've got Champions League football, and they're on the up under Unai Emery. Apart from obviously they started a bit towards the end of the season, but yeah, it's not as cut and dried as that. We all kind of love our club, don't we? And we feel like, why wouldn't you want to play for our football club, Tottenham Hotspur? But it doesn't really work like that in the real world. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens with Gallagher. I wonder whether the Villa involvement might be a good thing for Spurs. It might kind of force Chelsea's hand a little bit. Then, of course, we talk about players maybe not wanting to come to Tottenham. But what about the clubs wanting to deal with Tottenham? If I'm Chelsea have got a history of not really wanting to deal with... Chelsea have got a history of not really wanting to deal with Tottenham. Whether that changed in this new era with the owners that like to spend their money, I don't know. But maybe they would only agree to a deal with Villa, but then maybe they'd be in a certain point come the end of the month when they're a bit more desperate. Maybe that's what Spurs are holding out for. I don't know. We'll find out with Gallagher. I would be stunned if Spurs don't get involved in some way. It may be just simply to go, how much? No, you're right. That might be the extent of the involvement. But for a player that they clearly like and Postecoglou clearly likes, you would think if there's a way to get him. I was trying to think of some of the other players. So they signed... Maddison had a year left in his deal, didn't he? And they got him for 40. Basuma was a year left in his deal, got him for 30. So they are willing to spend quite big money on players with a year left. But that over 50 million would be a whole new ball game. But then you could maybe argue, what is he? Is he 22 or 23 now? Let's have a look. Let's get that right. Come on, Gallagher. He is, I'm pretty sure he's still 22. Nowhere near. He's 24. There you go. Shows how sometimes you think a player's a certain age and he's absolutely not. He's 24 years old. Turned 24 in February. So yeah, he's not a kid, but he obviously is younger than Maddison and Basuma were, and is an England international, as Maddison was, but also the captain of Chelsea. So maybe you can understand why they pay a little bit more. But yeah, keep an eye on that one. Let's see what happens with it. And yeah, it'll be interesting what happens with Villa, though. Because like I say, the financial side of it, the Douglas Luiz situation, looks like they're getting Ross Barkley as well. Yeah. I mean, Villa are a very attractive place to go right now. I can understand that. But I would think if Spurs spoke to him and he was told by Chelsea he had to go, there's two very appealing options there, I think, really. Elsewhere in the midfield, really interesting, I feel like, that Antonio Conte heading to, or has now been confirmed as the Napoli boss. That's going to be interesting, having him back in the game. Christian Stellini going as his assistant as well, and a couple of the other coaches that were at Spurs. Obviously, wish the best of luck to them. And you've got Jose Mourinho at Fenerbahce as well now. I wonder whether that helps Spurs, having two former managers that know their players quite well, and whether they want any of them to go with. The immediate one that kind of springs to mind is Højbjerg, because Conte liked Højbjerg, so did Mourinho. Conte would call him Hobby. I do wonder whether if Højbjerg, Napoli's a terrific club. Fenerbahce, obviously, it's probably, I think it's fair to say the league is not on the same level as Serie A, so maybe Napoli would be the bigger prospect, but or the better, the more attractive prospect for Højbjerg. But yeah, I was just trying to think of other ones that might go there. I mean, Emerson was a potential one, but looks like AC Milan are probably the keenest on him right now. Yeah, let me know. Put in the comments below. Let me know about other players that you think that Conte really liked, and Mourinho. You know, who knows? Maybe either would like to take Skippy on loan. They both really liked him as well and predicted big things for him. So yeah, I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking about that would probably fall into that. Maybe Ben Davies. Maybe Ben Davies could have a bit of a next chapter of his career if he decides that he wants to head off. He's only got a year left of his contract as well. Yeah. Just crossed my mind that those two managers now in place, in situ. I wonder whether that actually helps Spurs. You can just imagine. Does anyone want Tongi? Anyone want Tongi? I can't imagine that either of them do. Mourinho probably got the best out of him at Spurs, but it was always a roller coaster ride, is probably the best way to put it. And obviously, Tongi has been in Turkey last season, and while he won the league, contributed very, very little to that, indeed. But yeah, what else we had this week? We've had the kits. The kits came out. The home kit, not the kits. The other two are coming in the near future. The home kit came out. I quite like it. It's all right. It's one of those where I think it always looks better when it's actually on the players. It does take me back to the Martin Jol era, Robbie Keane, Edgar Davids year, the Lasagna Gate season. That was the last time they had navy sleeves, as in pure navy sleeves. Yeah, it's all right. I like the fact that navy shorts are back. I do. I know some people like the all-white look. I prefer that to be a special look. The European Nights Under the Lights look. I don't really want it to be the everyday look. I do think you can have too much of a good thing. You know. But it's an all right kit. It's fine. The thing for me, and this was the thing that I know, just if you want to feel old, look at the price of football kits today. Honestly, I don't think I ever felt as old as seeing that. They're just disgraceful. They're absolutely disgraceful. I mean, we'll talk about it in a moment. But the first time we'll see this kit, the club have said, is the pre-season fixture against Hearts on Wednesday, 17th of July. Oh, that reminds me, they've now finally confirmed the Team K-League fixture in Korea, the first one, which I think is on the 31st of July, if memory serves me right. So they'll go from Japan to play that one as the first game, and then Bayern as the second game, and then Bayern again when they come back. But yeah, the first time we'll see it, the club say, is the Hearts fixture on Wednesday, 17th of July. Technically, I think we'll see it before that. The under-21s will play at Enfield Town in their first friendly, which is on the 13th of July on Saturday. Usually, that's when you see the new home kit for the first time. Even though they're away, Enfield often wear a change kit, or I think last year wore one from a couple of seasons ago. And technically, I'm pretty certain Spurs will have at least one, if not a couple of behind closed doors training ground friendlies. So you may see them put out photos from that, in which you'll probably see the new home kit on them then as well. I mean, the other alternative technically for the Enfield game for the under-21s is if the away kit were to come out by then. Last year it didn't come out until just a couple of days, I think, before the Brentford game, the first game of the season. So whether it'd be available by then, I don't know. But I think it would probably more likely to be the home one. That was what they wore last year. But yeah, the price. Oh my goodness, the price. I could rant about the price forever. £85 to buy just a normal, as they call it, stadium shirt. Oh my God, it's so much money. And if you dare want to wear the actual elite one, or authentic one, some clubs call them, that the players wear, £125. It's just insane. So if you want to be one of those full kit, as people sometimes call them, some myself, I like to buy the shorts. I don't actually buy the shirt much anymore. I normally will get a training kit just to play five-a-side in, but I might buy the shorts to kick a football around in. But the shorts for the stadium ones, the elite ones, I don't think are available yet. But the stadium ones are £45 for a pair of shorts. I know I sound so old and kind of counting my pennies, but 45 quid for a pair of shorts. And the socks on their own are 18. So if you did want to be a full kit, as people call them, it would cost you, just for a stadium version, £148 and pushing £200 for an elite full kit. But that's just for adults. I worked it out because I thought about it. What if you're a family, right? And you've got two kids, let's say, and they're both kind of a little bit older. So Spurs home youth shirts are £65. Youth shorts are £33. The socks, I can only still find the adult prices, but they would go down to a children's size 12, so that's 18. You can get full kits for 3 to 8 year olds that cost £55, and for infants that are 50. I'm guessing they don't get called full kit if they wear them. But yeah, let's say you and your partner wanted to buy a shirt each. Just a stadium shirt, let's say, each, just. And you've got two kids, let's say they're 9, 10 years old, and you want to get the full kit because they play football at the weekend as well, and you want them to be able to wear it. So I counted up how much it would cost you as a family of 4, 2 shirts and 2 kids' kits. £402. £402! You could go on a holiday for that. It's just insane. I don't know what's happened to football prices and well, just all around, I know, but kits as well. And that's before you even shove on the names and numbers on the back. It's just mad. No wonder people have Son and Sar on their back, because if you get Kulusevski, you're broke. If you're not already. Just crazy. Thank goodness you haven't got kind of some really long Greek. I mean, Postecoglou is going to be pretty lengthy on there. Not that you'd probably have that on the back of a shirt, but I just, you can see I'm annoyed because my voice gets all high and screechy. I just feel like it's not that long ago that I used to, because my birthday's in August, so I used to ask my wife for a Spurs shirt for my birthday, one that I would wear for football. That was years back, it must be, because I said this to her yesterday. I was having my moan that I'm doing exactly now to her, and she was like, "Really? It's that much?" I swear I used to get them from you, though, about 40 quid, and that must have been maybe that's 6-7 years ago. Maybe it just shows how old I'm getting, but it's just crazy. And the thing that I think winds me up almost as much as the prices is the fact that it's every year now they change the kits. It used to be every 2 years, and then that got ditched because they realised, oh, look how much we can make if we do it every year. Not only that, we'll have 3 different kinds of kits. We'll have training kits and everything. There's a training jacket where you should go and get now. It's 130 quid on its own. It's just, it's mad. And look, I should stress this isn't just about Spurs setting prices, it's about Nike setting prices, because the new away England shirt is £85 as well. It's a very nice shirt. There was a half second where I was like, oh, I might get that. And I looked at the price and I was like, yeah, no, it's 85 quid as well. But loads of people are going to buy them. Same with these Spurs shirts. The England shirts, people are going to buy them. They're going to be wearing them at barbecues and whatever during the Euros, watching the thing. I looked around what else has come out at the moment in terms of other kits. It's only Spurs, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City that I could find thus far. If you're interested, Arsenal's new Adidas home shirt, £80, authentic one 110, shorts 38 or £45 for the authentic ones, and the socks 20. Liverpool, who are Nike as well, 80 quid for the stadium one, 125 for the elite, 43 for the shorts, or 63 for an elite pair of shorts. £63 for a pair of shorts. The world has gone crazy. Socks are 18. Man City, the champions of all things, well, also apparently suing the Premier League, according to reports. Their Puma home jerseys, £80, authentic one 120, shorts 38 and socks 18. So it is worth noting, and I don't know why this is, that all of those teams, their shirts were £80, the cheapest one for adults. Why is the Spurs one £85? Why? Spurs have got no reason to charge more. That's just mad. Those other three teams have finished higher in the table in recent years and won those trophy things. How in the world would a Spurs shirt be more valuable than theirs? I don't understand that. I don't know whose decision that is, whether that is some club part of it or whether it's Nike thinking that, I don't know. Whether the amount that they sell of someone like Sonny's shirts, I don't know. But it's the grubby side of the business I don't like. And it just feels like supporting a football club now, it's become like a luxury thing rather than just a way of life, and I hate that. And that's the same with the season tickets, that's the same with the match day tickets, same with the kits, just everything about going to football now. It's, I've seen people saying it's been kind of taken out of the hands of the people, and it's just become this luxury thing now. And look, I know there's some American fans have told me, I don't know what you're moaning about, NFL jerseys are that much or more. And they are, I've looked at them. I've bought an NFL jersey myself in the past. However, unless I'm mistaken, and please tell me if I'm wrong, NFL jerseys last more than one season. They're definitely more of a, is it 2, maybe 3 seasons, maybe 4 in some cases. I could be wrong though. Please let me know. Or maybe just people like to just stick with their jersey they bought. But I can understand with Premier League ones why people start to turn to dodgy versions of them and cheaper sites and things like that, because it's become so ridiculously expensive to buy them. It is mad. And also I can understand why people maybe go for the retro ones and wear their older shirts for longer now. Because you just kind of think, why? I could spend that money on so much else. And look, again, people say, don't want it, don't buy it. It's your choice. I get that. But people are going to. It's just that's why it is a cycle. It does keep feeding itself because people do. I saw on the Spurs website, like I can't remember, some of these companies that do it, where you spread your payments. And you think, I don't know, I always thought that was for stuff like computers, TVs, washing machines and stuff. At one point did we have to spread payments across to buy a football shirt? I don't like it. I just don't like it at all. It really winds me up. But yeah, look, I guess it's all part of the money that feeds into clubs. I mean, the Nike deal that Spurs have got till 2033. It's a long time left of it. £30 million a year reportedly they get from that. One of the longest football club deals in Nike's history when it was extended in 2018. I know Spurs fans kind of grumble about the kits and Nike kits. To be fair, they used to grumble about them when there were other ones as well, Adidas and Pony, and I don't remember Hummel being grumbled at. Kappa, that was another one, wasn't it? Kappa, I remember them as well. One thing they definitely grumble about is the red AIA logo. I get it. Do I like having a big red logo on the front of the shirt? No. Especially as someone that used to own part of, I used to have a sleeveless hoodie that I'd wear over a t-shirt as part of Spurs brand that was called Never Red. So I don't know how a club that had a brand called Never Red ended up having a red logo. I get it, but we're 11 years into the AIA deal now, and it's like still, I get people will say, yeah, but why is it red? And you're like, I'll tell you why it's red. That's a bit like a Roy Hodgson thing, wasn't it? It's because AIA paid Spurs £320 million deal that they signed in 2019 until the end of 26-27 season to have their sponsorship on shirts and everything. It's like, that's 40 million a year. So that's why you've got a red AIA. And yeah, is it selling out? I guess it kind of is, I suppose. But Spurs are getting £70 million a year from Nike and AIA towards the shirt stuff. £320 million over the course of 8 years. You're probably going to take a few grumbles. I think that's just kind of, unfortunately, the cost of it all. And like I said, they will sell these shirts everywhere around the world. Sonny's obviously is incredible for the club in that respect, as on the pitch, but also off the pitch as well. And, you know, we're all heading, the club are heading to Japan and South Korea. I will be there in Japan and South Korea as well. But I know that I will go there, and around that stadium on the match day in both Japan and South Korea, it will be flooded with Spurs shirts. There will be so many of them, the new ones as well. And I guess that's what it is, as it was when Spurs went to Singapore, Thailand and Perth last season. All the new shirts were out and they were there. It's interesting that Spurs haven't been to America for, was it 2018? I had back-to-back tours in my first couple of years reporting Spurs and I haven't been back since. It's just because they're cashing in on the Asian market from Sony. You know, they've done since then Singapore twice, Shanghai, Thailand, and yeah, this year Japan and Korea. So Korea twice, that was it. And obviously the Postecoglou side of things as well with Perth and Melbourne. So yeah, you can kind of you can see why they do it. It's a shame for the American fans because I know many American fans and they're so incredibly passionate about the team as well. And I'm sure they'd love to have them back, but. Yeah, that'll happen. But on the shirts, we're not far off getting 100 million. 100 million? Who knows one day. £100 shirts. I can see it. In the next 5 years, I'll be, if I'm not dead, through Spurs associated kind of heart problems. I'll be talking, having the same rant about a £100 shirt. It'll have crossed the £100 barrier. I'm sure it will have. What else we had this? I've got to stop talking about shirts because I'm just getting more and more annoyed about it. The Fan Advisory Board met at the end of last month. Their minutes have now been published from that. Not the most interesting agenda in the world. As someone that used to, as a young local news reporter back in the day, had to cover the likes of, town council meetings, county council, district council. Yeah, some right old boring council meetings I had to go to. And I still read this Fan Advisory Board meeting minutes and I was like, just a little part of me died. It was not the most interesting one. And actually they've also introduced a new thing in it where they're now not going to attribute any comments within the minutes to any particular person. It's just either going to be the FAB, the Fan Advisory Board, the fan representatives, or the club. Yeah, it's like let's try and take any last drop of clarity out of this that we possibly could that Muppets Like Gold will report on. One of the few interesting things within it, there was obviously the fans having their say on the ticket prices and being annoyed about consultation. There was all that in it. One of the things that I noted was they were asked about the potential investment into the club. You might remember, I've got it written down here. When Spurs did the financial results in May, Daniel Levy said the board and its advisors, Rothschild and Co, are in discussions with prospective investors as Spurs need to continue to invest in the teams to undertake future capital projects, so the club requires a significant increase in its equity base. So the club were asked in this meeting on any update on that potential investment, to which the minutes read, I read them out for you. The FAB asked about potential equity investment referenced in the financial statement and the club confirmed there was nothing further to discuss at the current time. There you go. That's the exciting update you were all waiting for. I have obviously noticed that in the last week or so there's been some social media links linking Spurs with the American investment firm MSP Sports Capital, taking over a sizable but minority stake in the club. If you're not aware who MSP Sports Capital are, they've got a stake within 5 clubs across Europe. They've got a big old stake in McLaren Racing, which I think they got about 4 years ago. Most recently, they've been linked with Everton mainly. Everton, I think they were looking to take them over. That didn't happen. Then when 777 Partners takeover collapsed in the last week or so, they've been linked with them again. From people I've spoken to within Spurs, they've really strongly, and I can only stress, really strongly shot down any suggestions that the club are currently in investment talks or in talks with MSP Sports Capital about investment. Yeah, I mean, that's not to say it hasn't happened, but that would suggest to me that if any exploratory talks did take place, they didn't reach any outcome that suited both parties, because yeah, the word coming back was quite strongly shooting that down. So yeah, it may just be, look, I'm sure, I mean, even that Levy comment above that I said, that is suggesting they were in talks. So we're at this stage now, a couple of months on from those financial results, and nothing has as of yet been announced, which suggests they've spoken to a number of various people and just haven't been able to find something that suits all parties. So I'm sure we'll get many names come up, many companies, and more and more will no doubt, until they actually find something that floats their boat. The other little thing I was going to speak about, because I found it quite interesting myself, was Hugo Lloris did an interview with Le Parisien. He's plugging his book that he's got out at the moment. And within it is lots of stuff about France, his career as a whole, and Simon America now. He also spoke about the final 12 months of his time at Spurs, starting with coming back from the World Cup after losing the World Cup final against Argentina and Qatar. And it's just quite interesting. So I'm going to read out those kind of quotes around that for you. He said, in January, after the World Cup, I knew it was going to be difficult. I was going to have to grit my teeth, but I planned to rely on the collective. I'd already experienced some down moments in my career, because we can't always be in the sky, we're still human. When the team is doing well and the performance is there, individual failures are not noticed, but my teammates were in the same state of psychological fatigue as me, and it got to me. I took refuge in my work, thinking that things would be better in February, except that when my sensations returned, my body gave up. The first time, after I received a knock during a match against Man City, I felt my right knee twisting. It was a tear of the external ligament, 8 weeks off. And the second, just a few weeks after my return to the field in April 2023, a tendon in my hip. This injury, initially psychological, marked the end of my season. And then he spoke about the end of his time at Tottenham. And he said it was a combination of several factors. The team was lacking results, and the coach, Conte it would have been then, under pressure was losing patience. Therefore, the group dynamic was negative. Tottenham were coming to the end of a cycle, and so was I. During my first injury break, I only wanted to come back and help the club achieve its goals, but after my second, there was no longer any issue. I knew that Tottenham wanted to recruit younger players, especially in my position. Summer was approaching, and I was no longer part of the plans. When the Championship resumed in August 2023, the coach informed me that would be Postecoglou, that I would no longer enter the field. I would only be a training player. I was pushed aside. I had become transparent. Those 8 months without playing were complicated. Since I've been playing football when I started at the age of 6, I've been thinking about the upcoming match, planning for the next goal. When all this collapses, we no longer know how to make any sense of physical effort. Why hurt ourselves? Why push yourself to come back? However, I was not unhappy. I took the opportunity to spend more time with my family, and it did me good. I was able to celebrate my father's 70th birthday and go to see my brother play in Le Havre against PSG. It would have been impossible if I'd been on a team sheet at Tottenham. One day I know football will stop for me. I will perhaps miss the adrenaline because it is a drug, but I am not afraid of this little death, as they call it in the sporting world. There is an afterlife, and I can't wait to know it too. So yeah, very poetic from Hugo. Very poetic indeed. But I kind of feel like it's been a bit of a different tone. The other ones, I don't really feel he is moaning too much about Postecoglou's decision, because he's spoken about it in other interviews, and there seems to be quite a mutual respect between them. It was just made very clear from the start. You said you want to leave. You wanted a new challenge. It's taken you 6 months. You haven't found one yet. Obviously, you eventually found the move to LAFC. But at this time, we're looking at Vicario. We want to start the next chapter here. You're kind of part of the older chapter, and you want to leave anyway. So I don't think there were any kind of hard feelings about it. It just, I think the words there may be a little bit more passionate sounding because of the way he was talking. But I just thought they were quite interesting. Talking of goalkeepers, just wanted to very quickly say what a brilliant experience for Josh Keeley. Josh Keeley, you've heard me speaking about him in the loan roundups and stuff I've done in the past 6 months or so. First half of the season, did brilliant stuff with the under-21s at Spurs. He was part of their unbeaten kind of first half of the season or so. Then he went to Barnet, Josh, and had a terrific loan spell there, helped them into the playoffs in the National League. And then he's had this great moment where he came back, and the Republic of Ireland, John O'Shea, they called him up to be part of the training with the senior squad. Republic of Ireland. It's brilliant. So he spent, I think it was about a week with them. Amazing experience for a young player. Was he 21-year-old? So what a great season. All those big strides he's made, and now an international kind of break where he spent with them, and then he headed off with the under-21s. I think it was for Tuesday night. They had games against Croatia and England, I think it was. Or is. I think they've played Croatia and they've got England. No, sorry. I think they're playing Croatia on the 7th and England on the 11th, but he was joining up with them on the Tuesday. That was it. So, yeah, really exciting for Josh. It's fantastic as well. It's been some really good, interesting little international bits with him, with Troy. Mikey Moore, obviously, with the under-17s, England under-17s at European Championships, having a great time. And, when we talk about kind of young players and opportunities and stuff next season, obviously for Mikey, we're intrigued to see what happens with him. He's so young. And what that kind of means for him and what minutes, and Tyrese Hall's another one as well. But I think I'm doing a Q&A at the end of this, just a quicker one, because I'm aware that I've spoken for quite a while. But I feel like having a quick glance across them, there were some youth questions, so I'm not going to tread on the toes too much of that. Elsewhere, what do we got? Just kind of thinking about strikers, really. And I was just looking at some of the kind of the links out there, and obviously there's still a lot of links. We know Spurs do like Santiago Jimenez at Feyenoord. He was at the Spurs stadium, wasn't he, a few weeks back watching a game. There's a lot of talk that they like Rodrigo Muniz as well at Fulham, who's kind of had, I guess, this big season for him. Always a bit of a worry, isn't it, when someone's had one good season? He may go, that's the gamble, I guess. He could go on and have a terrific season and just build on it. But yes, the stuff's gone quite quiet on Ivan Toney recently. Maybe because of the England squad involvement and everything to do with that, and the Euros coming up. I really like Dominic Solanke. I think he's a terrific striker. And I can really see him up front for Spurs scoring a lot of goals, but how achievable he is another thing. Will obviously also be association trained for England, for Spurs, not club trained, of course. Alexander Isak, I think, is going to be out of probably Spurs' range this summer, because probably you wouldn't leave Newcastle for a Tottenham right now, whereas maybe you would if it was an Arsenal or someone like that. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but you hopefully know what I mean. Spurs have been linked with loads of strikers. The one I keep hearing is Sevilla's Youssef En-Nesyri, who's had a really good season in La Liga. Again, bit of an older player. I think he's 27 maybe. When Spurs kind of sign strikers, they don't normally go at that age range, although Richarlison was, 25, 26. There's a couple in Germany, Serhu Guirassy at Stuttgart, Omar Marmoush at Frankfurt. They keep getting pushed out there as well. Again, I'm just kind of saying the names that have been pushed around at the moment. Gyökeres, isn't it? Victor Gyökeres. Sporting's had a brilliant season. He knows English football very well, of course, although his release clause, I think, is 85.5 million. That's a lot of money. Someone's got to go for him this summer, you would think. The other one has gone quite quiet, other than Roma linked with him, was Jonathan David at Lille. He's had a couple of terrific seasons now in a row. I'm surprised no one's kind of gone for him, the Canadian. He's looks like he's some player, really. But there's a lot of options out there, and I'm sure there's more that we're not even aware of. There's younger players out there that Spurs could also look at. But yeah, let me know in the comments kind of which players you would kind of most like to see come to Spurs up front. Jimenez seems to be the one that kind of people keep telling me his name when I kind of ask around about stuff, and that he's one of the ones that Spurs like. Again, it's the Eredivisie, isn't it? As I said right at the top about Troy Parrott, it's a jump. It is a jump, and whether he's maybe got the more physical game, is he Mexican? I think he is. Whether he's got something a bit different. It's not a Dutchman coming from the Eredivisie, I suppose. Flashbacks of big old Vincent Janssen. But I'm fascinated to see what happens with the striker situation, because they clearly need someone. It's whether you go big on that position or you go big on a winger who can also play through the middle, or you go big on both. Who knows? Who knows if Spurs know they've got to back Postecoglou and they've got to get the right things. And like I said, he's very comfortable, really comfortable, his expression about the plan that's in place. We just need to see how it unfolds now. And obviously, look, we've got to be aware that it's June the 5th. It is very, very early still. And I think Spurs will start to kind of heat up in their transfer activity in the second half of this month as they look to get players in before pre-season starts. Whereas right now, I think there's going to be quite a bit of posturing, and I do feel like the Euros and the Copa America do cause a few issues as well in the process of players just being wrapped up in that. And sometimes international managers say, no, there's no transfer talk at this period. You're fully focused on that. So that may play its part as well. Right, do a quick Q&A with some of the ones that we've got. I'll try and fit some in this one and some onto the next one. Clifford Phillips 4070 asks, are any of our plethora of youngsters likely to fill any of the squad roles we're looking to fill? I'm thinking Alfie Devine in midfield, Jamie Donnelly and Will Lancashire as backups for the forward line. I would love to see it. As excited as we all get about transfers, I would also love to see some of these young players put into these positions. My biggest issue I feel for Alfie this summer is going to be a young Swede called Lucas Bergvall. Lucas Bergvall played his last game for Djurgården at the weekend. They lost to Hammarby, I think it was 3-0. He wasn't going off to Sweden under-21s due to actually got an injury and we withdrew. I don't think it's anything serious, but so he now gets to kind of fully rest really for the next month, which after he told me, didn't he, a couple of weeks back, so I've got 2 pre-seasons, 2! And now he actually gets to have a proper break. He told me he was going to go off with his family and girlfriend for a couple of weeks holiday, but now I guess he can extend that a little bit more, which is probably a good thing for Spurs too. But yes, I do think Lucas is going to play in a similar position to Alfie. With Alfie, I guess, we talk about the club trained element. Maybe as a player, I think he'd be fine for the B list now. So whether, again, that's wasting a spot if you use it, but also I kind of feel like with Lucas coming in, maybe that's a good chance for Alfie to get another loan. Jamie Donnelly and Will Lancashire, I would probably think loans as well. But again, I do think the key time for all these young players is pre-season. I think it's getting in there in front of Postecoglou. Those early weeks when less of the international players are back, the games against QPR and Hearts and the behind closed doors friendlies games that they'll have, at least one, is getting the eye of him really. Will probably needs to rest up his aching body, as does Jamie. He's had a bit of a knee problem as well towards the end of the year. I think both of them could do with resting up their bodies and coming back strong. I would imagine with Jamie, definitely a loan, I would think, would be, unless he absolutely tears it up in pre-season, which I would love to see him do. He's got the ability to. I think a loan would be better for his development. I know there's a lot of interest in Jamie. And with Will, yeah, similarly, there's been interest in him too. But I wonder with him, maybe he's the one as a young striker you keep around as a backup if you did want to... Because Velis, I think, is going to have to go on loan because of the foreign player numbers if you want to register them. And I think Dane and Troy, it's interesting what they'll say to Dane and whether Dane, the idea would be as a player for this season, as a B-list player able to play in that Europa League and maybe be told, look, you're going to get more minutes in the cup matches to develop. Yeah. It's worth looking at. I'd love to see him in the young players. I think George Abbott will probably come along quite nicely this season as well. Whether that's on loan or whether that's with the first team, he's very versatile. A lot of good things I keep hearing about George. Made his Premier League debut at the end of last season against Leeds, and he's had a terrific year. Second half of the season, the captain for the under-21s for most of it. So, what else we got here? LM361, do you think Elise and or Eze are realistic targets? Spurs certainly like them both. I get the feeling that Elise maybe seems to be closer links to Chelsea, wasn't it? They almost signed him before. Eze certainly, we know that Spurs have liked him for a while. Wasn't he at a game as well? I think he's been. I think Base, who are the agency that represent him, have got a box at Spurs. And there was certainly talk about him being at Spurs and watching a game. that's, like I said, lots of players do that. It doesn't always mean stuff. I know I said that about Jimenez earlier, but it is something that players, when they're in the country or don't have a game, they'll come and watch a game because it's an amazing stadium as well. Obviously, Base having very close links with Spurs is another thing. Postecoglou's agency, Maddison's agency, Sonny's agency, Sarr's agency, Porro's agency, many of the youngsters that I just mentioned, I think Jamie Donnelly's as well, maybe Alfie Devine too. Quite a few of them. So that may play a part, but like I said earlier, I think it's probably one or the other rather than both of those leaving. Unless, like I say, if those release clauses aren't too complicated, maybe that's where something happens there. You see, I occasionally looking over at my laptop, which is down there, because, as I've said before, doing these in the transfer window are such a nightmare. I'm doing this slightly earlier than would normally record it, which leaves me massively open to the danger of something breaking this evening, news-wise, which it could easily do. So, yeah, but hey, just have to do another one. What else we got? VJet Thomas 7939 asked, do you think we'll be looking for defenders in this transfer window, or do you think we have enough depth with Dragoshin, Davies and Ashley Phillips and possibly Dorrington? Postecoglou said he wants another centre-back, so someone else will be sought. Ashley Phillips, I would maybe imagine, goes out on loan. Dorrington, he's had surgery, I think it was his hamstring, so he's going to be out for a little while, probably back at the start of early kind of start of the season. You would think that would make him then a candidate really to be one of the options, I guess, for the bench. Ben Davies, I'm still intrigued to see what happens with him. Year left on his deal. Postecoglou really likes him. Probably doesn't fit the inverted fullback role, but is very versatile across the back line as a squad player. I guess it's down to Ben Davies what he wants. I think he's at that stage in his career where really Spurs probably look to him to see what he wants to do. What else we got? Maharian Pendragon asks, are we still interested in Noosa? I haven't heard much about him recently. Obviously, they did trail him for quite a while and got close, but Brentford went for him. Then that kind of fell apart. He's had an interesting season, really, because obviously everything that happened with him as well. I don't know on Noosa. It would seem odd that they would suddenly drop that interest. I would imagine there's still interest there, but you would think Brentford would be kind of front of the queue if he does become available again this summer and clubs look at him. I must admit I haven't heard much on him, but that's not to say it's not going to be the case. Michael CD1GU asks, I've heard Spurs are interested in Solanke as one of the options for a new striker. I was wondering if that's still one on the radar as far as you know. What are your thoughts on him as potential signing? I've already kind of covered that. I really like Dominic Solanke, and I think he would score bucket loads at Spurs. But like I say, I haven't heard anything recently about him, but he would make a lot of sense if they did make any kind of move for him as a homegrown player, not club trained, but homegrown, and a very good player. I think he'd be a cracking kind of signing if they were to go for him. User JD 7FB 5CT 2F asks, will Luca Gunter or Josh Kelly be part of the first team squad next season? I think, bearing in mind you've got Vicario, Forster, Austin, maybe Whiteman, I think you can probably afford for Josh Keeley to head out on loan again. I know there's a fair few clubs in the Football League looking at Josh. I would imagine that would be the case. And then Luca Gunter, probably another season with the under-21s unless a loan offer comes in. As I've said before, if you get a loan offer for a goalkeeper, you probably want to take it for a younger one just to get them some development time because they're so rare, goalkeeper loans. What else we got? Chris Hoy, probably not the Chris Hoy. You said Ange remembers moments at previous clubs where he felt the team got his ideas and it became instinct. At what point do you think that happened this season? He's kind of hinted that it was the Chelsea game. When they went down to 9 men and they still played in the way they thought he wanted them to play. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the game. What else we got? Tottenham Hotspur asked, what are your thoughts, not Ange's thoughts, on offering Delhi some kind of route back? I'm a bit old for romantic dreams, but if it makes sense, or do you think Burval might be a similar player? He is a similar player. That's a great shout. For Delhi needs to just step away from the glare of coming back to someone like Spurs. Dele needs to kind of rebuild, start again, reset. He's got this lovely, brilliant target of the World Cup being back in the main kind of stream for that. But yeah, he needs to rebuild, find a club, and start over again in a way. Because look, he's been at Everton, he's been in Turkey as well. He hasn't played a lot of football, if any. I think, yeah, he needs to build himself up again rather than chuck himself into the kind of chaos that can be Tottenham Hotspur right now. Virtual Knight 2702. Do you think Tottenham should promote the strikers in their youth academy rather than buy one, as we have some brilliant players like Scarlett, Parrott and Lancashire? I would love them to do that, but they are looking for another striker. So I would love to see one of those three given an opportunity to try and impress, and I guess it's down to them to take whatever opportunity they get. What else we got? It might be a decent place to head off there, unless there's one that really catches my eye before we go. Lisa Wilkinson asks, what exactly is a statement signing? Always wondered. I guess it's a signing that makes a statement. A big money signing, I suppose, that lots of other clubs would have loved to have had. I suppose that's a statement signing. But it doesn't. Statement signings aren't always the best signings in a weird way. The correct signings are the best ones. The clever signings are the best ones. Mickey van der Ven. Yes, he was around £40 million, but he wasn't seen as the big, splashy, most expensive option in that position, and he turned out to be a brilliant signing. So, yeah, it doesn't always work that way. Adam Harris asks, are you surprised Spurs aren't in for Lloyd Kelly or Tosin Adarabioyo? Both homegrown and free agents, seems like a no-brainer to me. They liked both. They tried for Lloyd Kelly last summer, and actually they did have a go for Tosin as well, but Fulham weren't looking to let him go at that point. I think with those two players, again, it's about game time. And as I said earlier about Chalobah, fourth kind of defender. Lloyd Kelly played a lot at Bournemouth, will want to play a lot. Looks like potentially Newcastle. Tosin Adarabioyo looks like it's going to be Chelsea. I mean, it's very close to being Chelsea. Again, you'd hope, well, in his mind, he'll be hoping for a lot of game time there. I just wonder whether that's that little thing for Spurs. We're not quite on the level of, hey, we've got Harry Kane, want to be a striker at Spurs. It's not that kind of thing. But it is a case of you'd have to really bet on yourself to squeeze into that team. Right, last one. We'll do this one. Michael Hamilton asks, on Lucas Bergvall, where do you think Ange will play him? In the number 6, 8 or 10 position? I think number 8. Having watched him myself in the flesh, and having obviously seen lots of clips and bits and pieces of him as well, on top of that, he's really is a number 8. He can play in 6, 8 or 10 very, very well, but I think in the Postecoglou system, number 8 will suit him perfectly. I'm very excited to see what happens with Lucas. He's one I'm trying to temper my expectations because he is coming up from it's a massive jump in quality of the league, having watched it myself there in Bromma Paikana against Djurgården. But technique-wise, intelligence on and off the ball, and also physicality, that's got to come on a lot, but it's got a good foundation there. I've got a big hope that he makes a more immediate impression than we expect. He's a young player, so it's going to fluctuate, and he's going to have kind of periods of going up and down. But I do think we'll see him, settle in a lot quicker than maybe you would expect younger players to do. That's my hope. I'm not going to put pressure on him because, some people around him told me 6 months is probably the amount of time he needs to fully adapt, or at least adapt a fair chunk of what he needs to. But I do think he's going to be very exciting. So, yeah. Right, I'm going to head off there. As I said, anything could break within the next couple of minutes or so. Just as soon as I've got this awkward period of it takes about an hour and a half, sometimes more, to publish these. It just takes a while to get into YouTube's system, and it does all its checks and things it does as well. And in that time, I'm always like, don't let anything happen, please. and occasionally it does, and it probably will tonight because I've talked about it. I've probably jinxed it, haven't I? But there you go. But I'm going to head off and enjoy the rest of my evening. We got through loads. We had a good old chat about loads of stuff in that one, and you heard me rant about kits. Sorry about that. Right, time to head off. I'll try and do another one, maybe at the weekend if I can, if there's enough to talk about. If not, it'll be early next week. And yeah, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.